You're grieving someone you loved, and now you're stuck asking legal questions you never thought you'd face. And maybe the biggest one is this: can you actually sue the driver who caused the wreck, or are you out of options? Hi, I'm Ted Spaulding. I'm a wrongful death attorney here in Georgia, and I've helped families navigate exactly this: when to file, who has to bring the claim, and what it really takes to win a wrongful death case after a fatal wreck. In this video, I'll walk you through how Georgia law handles wrongful death claims after a fatal car accident, step by step, so you can focus on honoring your loved one while making sure their story doesn't end with silence. Let's get right into the most important question. If your family member died in a car accident here in Georgia, can you sue the other driver who caused the crash? The answer is often yes, but there are rules in Georgia about who can actually bring the lawsuit. Now, Georgia law is clear about who has the legal right, and what this is called is standing to sue for what's called a wrongful death. And here's how it works. Usually, and this is all by statute, by the way, so it lays it all out in a Georgia statute. The first person in line is the spouse of the person who died. If there is no spouse, then it's the children that can bring the case. If there are no children, then sometimes the parents of the person who died can bring the lawsuit. And if there's no spouse, no child, or surviving parents, then the person's estate, through an appointed representative, can file a claim for wrongful death. And let me give you a real-world example for one of my cases to help highlight this. Let's say your husband was killed in a crash caused by a distracted driver on I-285. As the spouse, you'd be the one who can bring the wrongful death claim, all right? And the lawsuit, ultimately, you are the party that is the plaintiff in the case against the driver who caused the wreck. If it was your adult son who passed away and he wasn't married and had no kids, you as the parent could bring the case. So you can see how that kind of switches, right? And I've had both of those types of cases. If you're not sure whether you stand and have the standing, don't guess. Georgia's law about who can sue is very, very specific. And it's easy to get tripped up here if you don't know what you're looking for and what the different statuses are. It's always best to talk to an attorney who can walk you through it, tell you whether you have that legal right given the family structure or not. And that way you know who needs to hire an attorney, if that's what you need to do, and therefore who's going to be bringing the case, the claim or case. Really important. Now, if you are the person who can bring the case, you're probably wondering, okay, well, what exactly am I suing for or bringing a claim for even? In Georgia, when you sue the at-fault driver after a fatal accident, you're usually bringing what's called a wrongful death claim. Now, what does that really mean in plain language? Well, there's basically two types of money damages that you can recover, okay? The first is what we call the full value of the life of your family member. This is a legal way of saying, what was your loved one's life worth, both in terms of money and the experiences that they will miss out on now. That can include lost wages. It can, meaning what they would have continued to earn for the rest of their earning life, and loss of things like companionship, parenting. They didn't get to have children, or they had children that are going to miss out on the rest of their child's life, and just living everyday life. The second type of claim is what's called an estate claim. And this is real important because wrongful death is different from the estate claim. And this is why I'm explaining this, because you want to know the difference between the two, because naturally people get them confused. The wrongful death claim is what you have the right to, which is you're standing in the shoes of your deceased loved one, saying if he was or she was alive, she'd be or he would be able to bring this claim. And here's what it'd be worth. I'm now doing that for them, what their life was worth, basically. The estate claim covers everything else, Well, what is that? It covers medical bills. So you don't have the medical bill claim. So if they survived, they went to the hospital. I've had cases where they survived for a week before passing and they have $500,000 in medical bills. You don't have that claim. The estate has that claim. Funeral costs. The estate has the funeral cost claim, not you. Now, you may have paid for it, and so the estate will have to pay you back. But the estate would go after the at-fault party for reimbursement of funeral costs, not you as the loved one. That's not part of the wrongful death claim. The other is pain and suffering. That is part of the estate claim. And this is all, I get it, very bizarre and difficult for folks. But this is oftentimes in wrongful death claims, you're going to need an attorney. Wrongful death does not include the pain and suffering that your loved one suffered before their passing. And again, you have someone who survives for days or weeks. There's a lot of pain and suffering there. That's an estate claim against the at-fault party, not a wrongful death claim. So you have to be careful on how all this works and know what you're claiming and what you're not as part of a wrongful death claim. So let's look at a quick example if we can. Imagine your wife was killed by a drunk driver, and I know that's horrible to have to think about. You can sue for her lost wages, the loss of her care and companionship, the cost of the funeral, and all her medical costs. If she suffered before she passed, you can also get pain and suffering, right? But a lot of these are mixed in, right? So you've got some of those that we just went through as part of that. That's an estate claim. And then you have portions that are the wrongful death claim. So you have to know those are two separate claims. There's two separate plaintiffs pursuing different components of the loss of your wife to a drunk driver. And it's not just about the money, right? Money civilly is all you can receive, but we know it's not all about that. I know nothing can replace a loved one. These are why these are the most difficult cases to pursue from an emotional standpoint. But these claims in Georgia, this is how they're recognized with you and your family and what you have lost. And it's a way to hold the at-fault party and the at-fault driver financially responsible, both through the wrongful death claim and potentially an estate claim if you have any of those items of damage. So you're probably wondering, okay, I know I can sue. I know what my damages are that I'm pursuing, wrongful death versus estate claim. And now you're probably wondering, well, how do I prove fault and what do I need to prove? So here's what you need to prove in a wrongful death case. And it doesn't change too terribly much from an ordinary car wreck personal injury case, but there's some nuances. So let's go through it so you can know what you need to prove to win your lawsuit against the at-fault driver. In Georgia, you need to know three key things. Number one, the other driver has to be at fault, obviously. That means that they did something wrong, not your loved one, to cause the wreck. Speeding, ran a red light, ran a stop sign, followed too closely, was a drunk driver, and they caused the crash. Second, you need to prove that your family member died as a direct result of that crash. The death has to be connected to the accident, not something unrelated. Third, you have to show the value that your family member, when they passed, had as a direct result of the crash. The death has to be connected to it, we know that, but the value of what you've lost, meaning your loved one. This means proving what your family member's life was worth, and it's worth to them, not you. Okay, so that's a weird component, but it's stated in Georgia law. It is the deceased's life value to them. They don't get to parent and miss out on all of the future enjoyment of parenting their kids. They lost out on their wages. They lost out on enjoyment of life. That is the value to them, not you. So, for example, if police reports show that the other driver rear-ended your daughter's car while speeding and witnesses confirm it, that helps prove fault. The medical records can confirm that the cause of death and that it was related to the wreck. Then as to the value of the loss, we often use job records, family stories, expert witnesses even, to show what your loved one contributed to the family, to the community, the enjoyment of their life, their life expectancy, so we know how many years they're missing out on all these things going forward to help value their life. And you want to keep in mind, as it, obviously as it is, that insurance companies will fight hard to avoid paying. They may try to say your loved one was partially at fault, or argue that the life wasn't worth as much as you think it is. That's why strong proof and a smart lawyer matter so much in wrongful death cases. It's why you oftentimes need a lawyer in these. Now, the next thing that we need to talk about is timing. And timing matters a lot in wrongful death cases. In Georgia, you usually have 2 years from the date of your loved one's death to file a wrongful death lawsuit. Now, that's typically, and by the way, what we call that is the statute of limitations, right? So if you miss this deadline, you forever lose your rights to bring a wrongful death claim. Now, there are a few exceptions to this. So, for example, if there's a criminal case against the at-fault party, there oftentimes is in wrongful death claims, the clock might be paused because of that pending criminal case. Sometimes other legal deadlines can affect the timing as well. But the safe bet is to start the process as soon as you can. And I can tell you, there's so many times family members come to me just a few weeks too late, thinking they had more time, and they didn't. So please, if you're ever thinking about bringing a wrongful death claim or case, talk to an attorney quickly. Don't wait until you destroy your case because you missed the 2-year deadline. Deadline comes quickly. 2 years, you think you have plenty of time. But what if you find out you're not the right party? We got to get the other one involved. You only gave it a month before the running of it. We can't get the proper parties aligned to get the proper lawsuit filed in time. So you got to be careful and give it time. It takes time to get these things put in. Don't wait until right before the deadline, and certainly don't wait till after. You'll lose all your rights. So a question I oftentimes get is, can I still file suit if the at-fault party got arrested or is facing criminal charges, say DUI, reckless driving, homicide by vehicle, those types of things? Does it mean I can't sue? No, the answer is you can still sue. No matter what happens in criminal court, you can still sue. Criminal cases and civil cases are two completely separate things. The criminal court is about punishing the driver and protecting the public. Your lawsuit is about compensating you and your family for your loss. Two totally different concepts. Sometimes a criminal conviction can actually help your civil case. And not sometimes, most of the time, right? Because they do most of the proof work for you, the fault work for you. All right? You get most of the evidence from them because they're able, with subpoena power, prosecutors, to do a lot of the evidence building way in advance of what you are going to be able to do civilly. And they've got ways to, investigators and everything else, to get things that you might not be able to otherwise get. So the criminal case can often prove your case for you, certainly when it comes to fault. But even if you don't get a conviction, or if they never face charges at all, which does happen, you can still bring a wrongful death suit. So either there are charges or they aren't. It does not affect your ability to sue. Now, again, remember, it might affect the timing of when you can, right? In the sense that it can extend it, but it's not going to affect you. You can't do it. So, for example, take a case I had a few years ago. College student was hit and killed by a speeding driver. The driver was charged with vehicular homicide, but that case drug on for a year. Meanwhile, we filed a wrongful death lawsuit and were able to recover damages for the family regardless of what happened in the criminal case. So it did not affect. We had more time. We could have waited, but we didn't want to wait. Why wait? So we made the strategic decision, go ahead and file a lawsuit while the criminal charges were still proceeding. You can do that. There is absolutely no problem one way or the other. Now, here's a tough one. What if the at-fault driver has no insurance or not enough insurance? This comes up because wrongful death cases are very, very valuable, unfortunately, because you're talking the loss of a human being. And sometimes drivers don't have any insurance. Sometimes they don't have enough, right? Oftentimes they don't have enough, to be quite frank with you. So what can you do? Well, in Georgia, there's a few options in this scenario, and we got to talk through them. You can look at your loved one's insurance policy. Many people have what's called uninsured or underinsured motorist coverage, and that covers for wrongful death as well. It's an injury. And so this kicks in if the other driver can't pay or if they can't pay enough. So sometimes there are other policies that might come into play beyond that, but that's the first one is, does your loved one on their auto policy or policies, you want to see how many they might have, it could stack up. Do they have UM? Is what we call it, UM, uninsured or underinsured motorist. That would kick in when the other side has no coverage or not enough coverage for the value of the claim. Now, we might be able to look at other sources of insurance. Maybe the at-fault driver was working for a company or driving someone else's car. Those policies may come into play and help. If there's just not enough coverage, sometimes you can sue the driver personally. I mean, you're always allowed to. That is your only, quite frankly, legal right, is some people might not have insurance. You can sue them personally. It's rare that it's worth it. You need to talk to an attorney about it because 9.9 times out of 10, it's all about insurance. And if there isn't insurance, it's not going to be worth it to sue someone personally. But you got to know you have that legal right. If they've got assets, high-paying job, something like that, lawyer needs to dig into it, help you make that financial decision. Is it worth it? Is there something to go after there? I had a client whose wife was killed by a driver with only bare minimum, state minimum coverage, which is what, $25,000 in Georgia. That's it for the wrongful death of someone. And we got lucky though, because the wife had plenty of UM coverage. And she had multiple policies, so we were able to stack them on top of each other. And the family got real help because of that. It was $1 million of UM coverage. So at the end of the day, 25 from at fault and $1 million of add-on UM from the deceased's multiple policies. So it really came into play and helped tremendously. So one question I get a lot is, how are lawsuits in wrongful death cases typically, what's involved in them? How long do they take? Do they go to trial versus not? And most wrongful death cases in Georgia don't end up in long, drawn-out trials. In fact, most are settled out of court. That means the at-fault driver's insurance company or sometimes their employer or another responsible party agrees to pay a certain amount rather than risk a jury trial because someone died. These are very valuable claims and they know it. But here's the truth. Insurance companies are not on your side. So remember, even though you probably have a very valuable claim, they know you're grieving and they might hope you'll accept a quick lowball offer. Even in wrongful death cases without lawyers involved, they're still going to try to do their job and settle this and save money. Don't fall for it. A good attorney can help you and your family know when to settle and when not, what's the real worth, when to fight, when to settle, and get every bit of compensation that your family needs and deserves. If the case can't settle fairly, it'll be tried, yes, and that is what needs to happen. So you might have to try the case, but that decision is always yours with advice from your attorney. Can you sue if your family member was partly at fault? So what if the other driver wasn't the only person to blame for the wreck? Maybe your loved one made a mistake too. Maybe they weren't wearing a seat belt. That now can be brought up in Georgia, by the way. Maybe it was a yellow light, so there might be a little bit of fault argument there. Can you still sue? In Georgia, the answer is yes, you can still sue. But there's a catch, so you got to be careful. It's not quite that simple. Georgia is a modified comparative fault state. That means if your family member was less than 50% at fault, you can sue. You can get a recovery. You then get a recovery based off of the percentage of fault. If they're 49% at fault, then the verdict is reduced by 49% and then down from there. But here's the catch. If your family member was 50% or more at fault, zero. That's the comparative fault mechanism in Georgia. So the limit is 49%. Above that, you're not going to recover anything. Now, of course, you're not going to know this because the jury has to tell you this, right? But if you've got fault situation and we're all then arguing with the insurance company, how much do we think a jury's going to put on the deceased? And this is how that works. So again, what you want to think of is a scenario like this. Let's say the other driver was found to be 80% at fault, your loved one 20% at fault. The jury verdict was $1 million, okay, for the value of the life of your loved one, $1 million. What do you receive? $800,000, okay? 20% reduction of the verdict because of fault. And this is a reason why a skilled attorney, anytime you have fault in a wrongful death case, you are going to need an attorney. Get in there and really fight over what the jury is likely to do with the percentages of who's at fault for what. Do not try to handle those types of cases on your own. And the final question that I get a lot is, what should you do right now if you're thinking about suing for the loss of a loved one? And here's what I tell most families here in Georgia. Time's not on your side. These are big cases. Insurance is going to dig in twice as hard on these types of cases because of the stakes. Evidence disappears, skid marks fade, cars get repaired or sold and destroyed, witnesses move away, change numbers, all of that. They forget what they saw. The sooner you talk to a lawyer, decide if it's a case that you need to hire an attorney for, and get in there and start building the evidence, the better. Everything needs to be gathered: accident reports, scene investigation, death certificates, medical records, photographs. I mean, it's a lot. And these are high stakes cases. Then you'll sit with your attorney, go through everything, know the case inside and out, know what you're going for, what is good, bad, and indifferent about the case. Even if you're not sure you want to sue, consult with a wrongful death attorney like myself. It's free. Find out if you got a case that's worth taking on, and then is it worth hiring the attorney? Remember, these are still taken on contingency basis. You owe nothing up front, no retainers. So if you hire someone like myself, you're not having to pay to build this case to see if you can pursue something. Why wait? So you've just learned exactly what to do if you want to sue the at-fault driver after a family member's death in Georgia in a car crash. From who can file, to what you can recover, to the deadlines, and the special issues that come up along the way. But don't stop here, folks. If you're starting this journey, there's something else that you absolutely need to know. Insurance companies will do everything in their power to pay you less than you deserve, even in wrongful death cases. That's why my next video is so important. 5 tips to stop insurance companies from lowballing you after a car accident. It's an important video to watch. Watch it now to make sure you don't lose out on the compensation your family needs and deserves. It'll give you inside information insurance companies hope that you'll never find out. I'll see you over there.